Welcome back to Be Sleepy Storytelling. Last time, Elias began to notice the city speaking in ways no one else could hear, but now that endless noise is disappearing, leaving behind a silence that feels far too alive. In this episode, Part 2. The stillness, the world around him grows quieter, and the line between his mind and the city begins to dissolve. Settle in, listen closely, because the silence always hides something.
Part 2. The Stillness. The days no longer had edges. Morning, afternoon, night, they all bled into one another like watercolors in the rain. Elias woke when the light through the window turned gray rather than black, and slept only when exhaustion pulled him under. The city outside moved as it always had, in restless noise and motion, yet it all seemed far away, like a film playing behind glass. He had stopped opening the curtains. The whispering still came, though now it was softer, more intimate. Sometimes it rose through the floorboards. Sometimes it trembled through the pipes. Sometimes it felt like it came from inside his own breath. He tried to drown it out with music, with the television, with his own voice reading meaningless sentences aloud. But the moment he fell silent, the whisper would return, patient, waiting. We never left. You were the one who stopped hearing. Elias began leaving notes for himself, short, desperate reminders on scraps of paper scattered through the apartment. The sounds aren't real. Don't look at the walls. You live alone. The last one frightened him most, because lately he wasn't sure if it was true. A few nights later, he woke to the sound of running water. He stumbled into the kitchen. The tap was off, the sink dry. But the sound continued, muffled from somewhere beneath him. He pressed his ear to the floor. At first, he heard nothing but faint vibration, the usual hum of the building. Then came something heavier, the rhythm of footsteps pacing slowly below, and a second sound like a chair scraping across wood. His downstairs neighbor had moved out months ago. The apartment below was empty. He crouched there for a long time, the linoleum cold beneath his knees, listening to someone move back and forth in the vacant space. Then, as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was so complete that he could hear his own pulse thudding behind his eyes. He went back to bed, but he didn't sleep. In the days that followed, the building seemed to shift subtly around him. The hallway outside his door looked longer. The numbers on the apartment doors didn't line up as he remembered. Once, coming home from the corner shop, he reached the 12th floor and realized there was one door too many. He blinked, shook his head, went back down and up again, but the extra door was gone. The woman across the hall no longer greeted him. In fact, she no longer seemed to leave her apartment at all. Her name, what was her name? He'd said it once, many times, hadn't he? But now, when he tried to remember, it felt like reaching into water. He saw movement under her door one night, a shifting shadow as if someone stood there waiting. But when he stepped closer, all light vanished from the crack beneath. The messages on his computer had grown stranger. One morning, he woke to find all his translation files replaced with a single document titled listen_to.docs. He hesitated before opening it. The file contained only one sentence, repeated over and over. We are inside the quiet. He deleted it. It reappeared an hour later. When he unplugged the laptop, the screen stayed on. Lines of text began to type themselves slowly, each letter appearing with a faint tap of the keyboard. We waited for you to come back. You always come back. He slammed the lid shut. The faint hum of the hard drive continued like breathing. He started leaving the apartment more often after that, just to prove the world outside still existed. The city should have been a comfort. Too loud to be imagined, too alive to be unreal. But even there, something was wrong. The crowd seemed thicker, yet quieter. People's faces blurred in motion. No one met his eyes. The sound of conversation drifted through the air without direction. Voices speaking words he couldn't quite catch, syllables that dissolved when he tried to focus on them. He stopped at a cafe he used to frequent. The barista looked up from behind the counter with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Long time no see, she said. Elias tried to return the smile. Yeah, been busy. She hesitated. Do you still live in the building on Ashmere? He froze. I do, he said slowly. Her face darkened, the smile slipping away. That building's condemned, she whispered. They tore it down months ago. He stared at her, searching her expression for any sign of a joke. No, that's impossible. I live there, right now. The woman blinked, and in that instant, something in her face flickered, her features shifting, softening, as though the air between them rippled. For a moment, Elias saw not one face but several, layered and transparent, each whispering something soundless. Then the world snapped back. The barista was just a woman again, holding a cup, looking at him with pity. Maybe you should go home, she said gently. He did. He doesn't remember the walk back. When he reached his floor, the hallway lights flickered, steady, then stuttering, then steady again. The hum of electricity vibrated through his bones. The smell of dust was thick in the air. As he reached for his door, he noticed a thin envelope wedged between the frame and the hinge. No stamp, no handwriting, just his name printed faintly in gray. Inside was a note typewritten on paper that felt damp and cold. Stop leaving. It's quieter when you stay. He dropped the paper. It fluttered to the floor, landing face down. There was something written on the back, too, faintly penciled, as though someone had pressed hard from the other side. He flipped it over. They can hear you now. The whispering grew louder after that. He no longer needed to press his ear to the wall. The voices filled the room like static, fragments of words dissolving into one another. Sometimes they spoke in unison, sometimes in layered echoes, sometimes in laughter that wasn't quite human. He shouted at them once, slammed his fists against the wall until his knuckles bled. What do you want from me? The laughter stopped. A voice, low, hollow, almost kind, answered, We want you to remember. The lights went out. In the darkness, he heard footsteps approaching, slow, careful, coming from inside the apartment. He pressed himself against the far wall, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped somewhere near the center of the room. He could feel, not see, something there, waiting. When the lights flickered back to life, the room was empty, but his laptop was open again on the desk and a new line of text blinked on the screen. Look behind you. He didn't. Time slipped after that. Elias stopped keeping track. Some nights, the city outside shone bright as day. Other mornings, he woke to find darkness still pressed against the window. He caught glimpses of himself in mirrors, always a fraction delayed, his reflection staring a heartbeat too long. Sometimes it smiled when he didn't. Once, he caught sight of movement behind him in the reflection. A blur, a second figure standing in the doorway. He turned quickly, but the doorway was empty. When he looked back, the mirror was cracked, as though something inside it had pressed too hard against the glass. He found another letter a week later, or maybe a day. Time had lost shape. It was slipped under his door like before, but this one was longer. He read it twice before understanding the handwriting was his own. You have to stop listening. Every time you hear them, they grow stronger. You think you're alone, but you're not. You never were. The walls remember you. The floor remembers you. They know your voice now. Leave, while the silence still belongs to you. He folded the paper carefully, slid it into the pocket of his coat, and sat by the door until morning. But when morning came and he finally stepped outside, the city was wrong again. The air felt too still, too heavy. Cars lined the street, but none were moving. People stood in clusters, faces turned upward as if listening to something distant. Their mouths moved soundlessly. The entire world seemed caught in a moment between seconds. He turned back toward his building. The windows stared down like empty eyes. For the first time, he wondered if anyone else lived there at all. That night, unable to bear the silence, Elias opened his laptop again. The screen glowed faintly in the dark, humming softly like a heartbeat. A new document was already open. He didn't type anything, but letters began to appear anyway. You wrote to yourself because no one else would answer. You built this place to keep the noise out, but it only made us louder. Now there's nowhere left to go. Elias watched the words fill the screen, one after another, steady and calm. Stop pretending you're alone. He reached forward and closed the laptop slowly, pressing the lid down until the screen went black. The whispering didn't stop. It only grew softer, closer, as though the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. And somewhere deep within that stillness, he heard the faint, steady rhythm of breathing, not his own.
Thank you for being part of Be Sleepy Storytelling. If this chapter left you with chills, remember to subscribe and share the story with someone who enjoys slow, psychological horror as much as you do. The final part, the echo, is coming soon. Until then, stay quiet and stay awake.